Hello, everyone, and welcome to our week 8, the final episode for this year. We're um, finishing season 3, talking about the what we see as being the future trends in children's books for 224, 225, 226, maybe thinking ahead. Um, I'm here once again with my partners in story, Sarah, Josh, Michelle, Holly, and Karen. Can we start with, I'm just going to go around the clock. Sarah, what are your thoughts on future trends?
So I was thinking about this when I knew this is what we're going to be talking about, and I was thinking about all the different themes that we spoke about in the last series, and we were talking about obviously more diversity, more inclusion, more emotions-based stories, and I personally think that that's still building, that's still going. But one thing that I have noticed, which I think is becoming a trend for 2024, is actually the illustrations. So there was a time where children's books suddenly became quite arty, quite stark. There was a lot of sort of this Procreate being used. And it's actually kind of turned around a little bit, because a lot of illustrators that I speak with have said that they're being asked to kind of go back to old school. And a lot of publishers are looking now more at these kind of watercolor type illustrations again. And for example, one illustrator that I've worked with on a couple of books, she did the Slow Superhero, and that was very stark, very arty, really, really eye-catching. Absolutely loved it. And then she changed the style again for, this is actually My House, My Home. That's the Dutch version. And she changed her style, um, and went back to how she first began. And it's more kind of like a watercolor effect. And it's actually done really, really, really well. And she was actually picked up by an illustrating agency because of these illustrations. So I think it's gone back to that. And what I think that means in turn for us as authors is that I'm seeing a lot of these books where they're incorporating this style of illustration. Now, this might just necessarily be in the UK, possibly, because obviously trends are different for each market. But for example, a friend of mine wrote a book called Puddling, and it's all about jumping in puddles, just a really, really beautiful, lovely, simple childhood activity. So, of course, the illustrator did all the puddles and all of the illustrations in watercolor, and that's done amazingly well. When you think of jetty jumping, I think that's an Australian one again. So all of these, the illustrations in turn gives us as children's authors ideas of what publishers are looking for 2024. So like I say, this might just be the UK, but definitely here it's more about going back to nature, and these kind of old school childhood things that we did when we were younger, jumping in puddles, playing in leaves, climbing a tree, jumping jetties, all this type of stuff. And I think that's coming through with the type of illustrations that they're looking for. So that's really in the last 6 months, I've been hearing this a lot from illustrators that I work with, that they're having to change their style for our market here and go back to the old school that they did before it kind of got very trendy and very arty. So I think that's something for picture book authors to think about. I mean, Karen, you've absolutely nailed it with Our Shell Harbour. I mean, those illustrations are exactly what I think is coming on trend, especially here in the UK.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you agree with that, Karen?
Yeah. I also think the trend still is for less words as well. In Australia anyway,
In Australia it is, yeah.
so there's also that trend, and I think they're even pushing it to be a little bit less. They like about 340 words, but I still think it depends whether it's a literary picture book or a funny one. The style of book will determine too, and the topic, the amount of words. And I think if you're too sparse with words, you lose your language, so you have to be careful. but definitely nature and exploring the world and appreciating the world, even gratitude, self-help. Their parents are seeking them. They're seeking that sort of sense of comfort from picture books, and that the world's a beautiful place and to be out there and explore it and experience it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, a sense of freedom for a child. So they'll go out and be free in the world and not worry and know the world's a good place and it's theirs for the taking. It's not, a thing to worry about. It's picture books. They're looking for picture books to give reassurance. I just read one and it's the most divine book, but it's wrapped, it's for a Christmas present, 18 Summers of Loving You. And it's a bit like what Sarah was saying, back to that older thing. So it's basically the most beautiful book. I can't think who wrote it. Oh, it's divine, but I've only got you for 18 years and all the things that
Yeah.
and I was like, oh. It's like, guess how much I love you. That book's so popular. So new versions that have that heart feel are coming. And that's one of them. And I think Davina Bell, her books are sort of self-helpy like Josh. And Michelle's on a trend too with Ruby's Repair Cafe. It's, about appreciating and protecting the planet. So don't just throw everything out. It can be repaired. That's there too. But I think it shouldn't be pushed or preached. It's very much heart. If it's in the message and it's a heart message, not, you need to do this or we should do this, or it's subtle how it's
We've always
done.
got that the 80s, Shirley Hughes and that that kind of style. But also on the flip side, which obviously the industry is always two halves, always, and it never makes sense. But graphic novels are huge as well. And I'm seeing that with my 7-year-old. I mean, she is really into graphic novels. So I think it's these two halves of going back to kind of old school, with these wonderful emotions books in the middle and then graphic novels. So it's quite stark, actually. You can tell the difference between them all.
Holly, do you see those trends in Canada? Or is Canada different?
I really feel that it's the same. Like definitely the nature, simplicity. And I think just like worldwide with the wars, I really think that everyone, all ages are looking for the hope.
Yeah, looking for hope. Yeah.
I think that's a really big one.
Yeah. Do you agree, Josh?
Yeah, I suppose I really don't know what the trends are actually happening at the moment, because I don't actually get exposed to too much of what's happening. But I suppose it is, from what little that I've seen, it is an element of simplicity is what we're talking about. It's like less complex, less detail, heavy storylines, more let the illustrations tell the story, and just let the beauty of the illustration really soak up or really sort of fire the imagination of the child who's reading it, I suppose, and letting the text just take a little bit of a slight back seat and let the illustrations really flow, really tell that story. And I think that's something that parents, when they're choosing a book or when the kids pick it up, they go, okay, well, there's two angles here. We've got really delicious illustrations that are really telling a story, and we've got really simple text. So it's great for early readers. So when they're starting to learn how to read, they've got just simple text to do, but the visuals are so engaging. So, but apart from that, I really haven't got no idea. Let's be brutally honest.
And that's fine. That's fine. And it's because you're so niche and
yeah, I suppose I just make
okay.
my own rules up and I just put it out there and see what happens.
Yeah, and that's okay.
It works.
but yeah, I agree. I think, the books on inclusion and diversity and disabilities and your mindfulness, they're growing
Mhm.
stronger. They're always going to be there. Your environmental books that you spoke of, Karen, they're growing. They're growing stronger. STEM and STEAM seem they're there, but they
Yeah.
seem to me, I don't know if you agree or disagree, they're kind of plateauing. They're still there, they're still being written, but the stories that were really big on girls can do
Yeah.
this, and this, still there, still going strong, but plateauing at the same time. I don't know. Do you agree with that? That's just what I'm seeing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think,
I-
yeah,
More niche. They're more nichey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we need to preface this conversation as well around that there is a slight danger in writing to a trend, because a lot of what we are seeing now was contracted 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. So when we're looking at what's coming out, what we really should be doing is going to the submissions pages of illustrators, going to things like Writers Marketplace, wishlist.com, going on Twitter and looking at agents and publishers and looking at what their wish list is. So like Josh, I think there is something to be said for just staying in your in your comfort zone and writing your heart story, because writing to a trend can be super frustrating when you're the third pug book that they've received and there's so many books already about pugs that you take it as that your book's not good. It's just that they've had too many pug books. If you have a look at the submissions that are out there at the moment, everybody's wanting nonfiction, which for me
really?
is so interesting that a lot of traditional publishers are wanting
That's written for me,
nonfiction
yay.
picture book. Yay! Nonfiction picture books, it's one of the fastest growing categories in the
Yes,
Children's Book
yeah.
Council of Australia Awards. There used to be hardly any books in
Yeah.
that, and now
China is
so
referring to them as pop science.
yeah,
Oh,
oh wow,
so
love
mine
that.
still wouldn't fit into that then.
Pop
Oh,
science.
yeah, it's a
I-
tricky one. It's a tricky one. Yeah, so
yeah.
they want non-fiction, and this
Non-fiction,
is
environmental.
Actually,
very
can you define what a non-fiction picture book is?
sure. So non-fiction is different to faction, and I know that we have done a session before on writing factual things in a fiction way. This is actually books about mushrooms, books about bugs, books about
Gotcha.
yeah, that kind of thing. So it's a again, like what was in the back of Sarah's book, where you usually have some non-fiction glossaries, some information in the back that it's actually non-fiction, but it's written in a picture book format for that age group. And there's a couple of reasons why I think this is happening, and it's also filtering down to a lot of the fiction picture books as well, is when you think about sales in picture books that's happened since COVID. For the first time in a long time, picture book sales have dropped. And it used to be that picture books were consistently always the best-selling genre. That has actually been overtaken now by crime genre, horror genre, and YA and romance are shooting up behind it. And because we just simply don't have a lot of people reading to their kids, we don't have a lot of people who have picture books at home. They're relying on schools or grandparents. Picture books now are unfortunately being delegated to the realm of either educational or gift. So when you think about publishers, they don't necessarily want beautiful stories and, all of that kind of thing. They want something that a teacher can use in a classroom, or they want something that people are going to walk into a bookshop or buy online for a birthday or Christmas or Easter, and that's what I'm hearing from a lot of publishers, that it has to have a really strong pitch to the commercial side of it
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you to get. And I think, again, my last point is that's why independent publishing is taken off right about now, because there still is a space for all of those other beautiful stories that are just stories, that are just gorgeous, read
Yeah,
at night, kind of kids loving stories.
yeah.
And I think a lot of creatives are seeing that they're not going to get that through the traditional publishing platform, so they are then deciding to go down independently and still fill the gap in the market, which is creating all those gorgeous stories where kids see themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I had 2 queries today. One email, one phone call, from 2 authors, opposite sides of the country, who have these beautiful imaginative stories, and they're just purely imaginative, joyful stories. And they're like, and they're talking about exactly that. They're not educational. They don't fit into that bucket. They don't fit into this bucket. And they're like, what do we do with them? I said, well, you know, if you want to self-publish, go for it, because they're great stories. But realistically, your traditional publisher, you know, honestly, probably not going to happen. By all means, submit. But if you can find one, great. And I think, you know, it's just a shame that these stories are still being written. They're still out there.
Also,
But then no one knows where to take them, what to do with them.
also the market's squeezed in different ways, with parents not being able to afford a lot at the moment. So they haven't got the money to buy. A lot of people don't have the money at the moment for books, and publishers also are getting squeezed, and it's a tough market for them, and picture books cost them a lot.
Yeah, it's the color printing.
Yeah, it's a big outlay, it's a big risk. So you've got that, the sales, like what Michelle was saying, and then you've got the cost. Paper's gone up. Illustrations are not cheap. Printing's not cheap. And then, you know, what if you've outlaid all of that and your book doesn't sell? And a publisher has to consider that. And so they've got to look at where it will sell, what they think will sell. And then the bigger publishers, when they approach someone like Target or Big W, they have a wish list of what they're looking for. And they will say, this will sell or this will sell. And if you don't fit that box, you're not on their shelf.
Yeah.
Or the little publishers don't even get a chance to get their book on the shelf there.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think you're going to see that a lot more influencers, a lot more people who are on TikTok and Instagram getting publishing contracts as well, because they already have the target audience. And so a lot, you know, it used to be sports stars or movie stars or singers that would get, you know, the book deals to kind of capitalize on their audience. But now we're seeing a lot more people who are actually being offered book contracts from their TikToks. So they're actually being approached, and that has happened numerous times in the last 12 months where publishers are actually approaching people who already have a guaranteed audience.
Yes.
A good example of that is, remember Baby Shark? And that started off as a YouTuber or something, and then it's become huge.
I think only the handful of people can mostly transfer their influence into an actual longevity of a product and multiple books that actually have originality, that actually have a connection and stuff.
Longevity is the key there.
But sometimes I don't think they care necessarily, because they get thrown a whole lot of money to be able to do it. And it's that it's the cycle. Like if you're, and this again, Josh, what am I saying? Whole nother topic. It's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But the,
Are you writing this down, Jen?
No, I missed that one.
2024. So yeah, so the influence of influencers on the publishing industry and how
Yeah.
they're not in it to necessarily, you know, make great books for kids. They are in it because there is a really big check if
Yeah.
they
Yeah, exactly.
will do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Exactly.
that's
Which
the
is
same with
fine.
the-
Like that's, yeah.
But that's the same
that's
thing
what they
with
do.
celebrity writers
It's
and
full
then
of
having
fun.
their books ghostwritten and stuff like that. And it's
Yeah,
like, I would really love to know there's that famous artist / comedian who's contracted to write 50 books in 2 years. And really, is he really going to write all of them, or is he going to get a ghostwriter?
Mm.
Mm.
Mhm.
Another trend actually that's here at the moment is this hashtag of reading for fun, and I think that comes back to a lot of the indie publishers again. Interestingly, some of the authors that are kind of pushing this are very well-known authors. They've kind of already made it, and now they're like, oh, let's just get rid of all these themes and, you know, teaching the child, let's go back to just reading for fun. So trends are funny because sometimes people can just create them from nowhere, but the real trends, like Michelle said, were actually signed off 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
is important to not get caught up with the trends so much. It's good to see what's out there, and it's good to see what people are reading and what's being bought, and the type of books that people are talking about. But as we've always said in every episode, if you are a children's author, you're a writer, just be true to what story you want to tell and how you want to tell it. Because don't forget, trends come and go and they come back round again. So, you know, 3 years down the line, you're going to be in a really good position again, because it just changes all the time. So although it's good to be aware and to sometimes maybe just adjust things slightly, don't fall into the trap of trying to jump on that trend, because by the time you've gone through all of that and you've changed actually your authentic voice, that trend's probably going to be gone again. So
Yeah.
really just stay true to what you want to write, and just write multiple, like just don't stop. Just if you've got a story after story, just keep writing them. You know, there's no harm in keep, you know, I've got a pile like this, and we probably all have, and at some point they will just keep coming back into trend. So
Yeah.
that is the game. That is how it works.
Yeah.
If you
That's one bit of advice that I gave to these 2 authors I was speaking with, that hashtag reading for fun, because that's what they've written: fun, imaginative, creative stories. Didn't tell them about that hashtag, didn't know about that, but I might actually start that one. Because that's what we want, you know. It's okay to have all this other stuff, and it's certainly there, and it's not going to go away. But we do need to remember, I think kids are kids, and they do need to read for fun. We do need to instill that passion for learning through story within them. And if kids don't have those fun, imaginative books that they can perhaps choose themselves, trend or not, then, you know, where do they start? Where's the beginning? Yeah. So I'm going to go with that trend, Sarah. I'm going to start that trend, reading for fun hashtag.
Good. Hashtag reading for fun. Yeah. And of course, once they become readers, then these other books will start to make sense to them, all these wonderful books that Josh writes. So, you know, we just need to encourage them to be readers in the first instance.
Yeah.
And if you ask a publisher, like when you attend a conference, they always usually have a publisher panel, and someone inevitably always asks, well, what are you looking for? And they go along the line, and most of them will say, I'll know it when I see it.
Yes.
Don't have a trend. They just want something. They just know, they'll feel it, they'll see it, and they'll just go, I want it.
Yeah.
It isn't a trend. It's just the writing, and whatever it is, it grabs them, and they can visualize it.
Yeah.
And it fits that publishing house too, because each house has a different flavor. Like Ice Cream, You've got to know which ice cream flavour that house is.
Yeah, yeah.
Avocado ice cream.
And it comes back to originality of story, doesn't it? There's 1,000 stories out there on, whatever, Romeo and Juliet, but it's how it's told. It's that originality that makes all the difference. And that's what a publisher means when they say they know it when they see it, when they hear it. It's yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So that was really, really interesting. So trends or not, just keep doing what we do. Just keep writing, and like you said, Sarah, it circles around. Trends come and go. I think, we will always have those. Mindfulness isn't going to go away. Inclusion and diversity isn't going to go away. Environmental works is growing stronger and stronger. Your sense of community, like your book and your Repair Cafe, Michelle, they're all there to stay and they're growing. Just one other thing I wanted to touch on quickly. Poetry is coming back really strong here in the Australian curriculum. Yes, Michelle's going. Is that the same for you, Holly, over there? Do you know? Are you still in touch with the school scene over there?
I'm not sure about the poetry. I have to say that isn't an area that's not a strength of mine.
Yeah.
So I think I wouldn't say that I have a really good pulse on that one.
Yeah, that's okay. Sarah, is it that happening in the UK?
Interestingly enough, the Waterstones laureate is Joseph Coelho, who is a children's poet. So he picked up the role from Cressida Cowell last year. I think it was September last year. So he'll be the laureate for, I think, about 3 years, and he is a children's poet. So he's really pushing that in the UK at the moment, going into schools and just trying to excite children about poetry again, because quite often I think when they look at books they think of rhyme, but obviously poetry is very different, and I think it just feels a little bit grown up sometimes to children and a little bit distant and old-fashioned, and they just think of Shakespeare and things. So I think he's doing a really good job in the UK at the moment. Getting
do you think
poetry.
it will stay as a trend, or do you think it will come and go as a trend, or do you think it's here to stay?
Yeah, I mean, I think Joseph's got another couple of years left, and I think there's a lot of people that kind of jumping on with him now and really trying to push this poetry side through. Who knows? I mean, it's so fickle, the industry, so we just don't know. But at the moment, it's definitely been spoken about a lot more. And yeah, he's doing a great work actually, and that's Waterstones. So that's a huge market.
Yes, yeah. Michelle, do you think the poetry here will just come and go as a trend, or do you think it's back to stay in the curriculum?
I think now that they've introduced it, there's always going to be a place for it in the curriculum, because it just helps teachers so much with so many different aspects of the curriculum, not only learning poetry as poetry, but it helps with spelling, it helps with writing, it helps with performance poetry. Like, there's so many aspects of it. Even I know teachers who are using it for maths, like they're using the rhyme and rhythm and the canon and the 1 + 1 and there's music. The great thing about poetry is that it can be used again across so many different things. And when you have a look at a lot of schools moving to that baccalaureate, I think it is, so it's a style of schooling where they have classes that aren't just maths and science and English and singing, but they have classes that incorporate a lot of that. Poetry is really great because it does transcend across a lot of those different things at the same time. So yeah, I definitely do. And I think it's going to be really prominent from prep probably all the way up to grade 5 and 6 as that core primary school thing. And then when it gets to high school, that's when it kind of morphs and changes. Oh, and my lights just went out. Hello. it morphs and it changes, and then they start looking at other things as well. But yeah, I mean, I hope it is. I hope it's not a trend. But you never can tell.
No.
You never can tell, and that is so true. So, and I think we will end it on that. So another really insightful conversation once again. So thank you everyone for joining me for our last episode of season 3, the Inspire series. It's been great to be with you again. We're about to break for Christmas. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you, and a huge thank you to our viewers, our supporters, our subscribers. We appreciate you so much, and the feedback that I'm getting is yes, there's lots of other episodes, Michelle. There's lots of other that can grow from all this. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Christmas, fabulous New Year, and we will see you back again in 2024.
Wow.